You're listening to the Awakened Feminine podcast. I'm your host, 𝐄𝐦𝐢𝐥𝐲. Welcome. Each week, I'll be chatting with thought leaders from around the world as they share the love and wisdom they've picked up along the way in this journey called life. Whether it be their stories, lessons, tips, or expertise in the field, you'll be sure to get your weekly dose of inspiration and tools on how to lead a soul-aligned life. Let's go. Hello and welcome to the Awakened Feminine podcast. I'm your host, 𝐄𝐦𝐢𝐥𝐲, and today I have the beautiful Emily Todd with me. Emily is an ICF-certified personal freedom and business coach, speaker, and corporate wellness facilitator. She supports women to break free from the 9-to-5 hamster wheel, launch or scale their heart-aligned business, and build a life guided by their desires versus the life that's expected of them. She describes herself as a rule-allergic Aquarius who loves nothing more than doing the exact opposite of what she's told to do. And I am going to bring her on now and everything's going to be perfect and she's going to be there. Hello, Emily.
I'm here and everything's perfect except for my hair.
You look beautiful. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm so excited to be here. Finally. We were just saying this has been a year in the making.
I know. We met in probably March, April last year. And then you were scheduled to come on, and then I had to go into hibernation, and I'm so grateful that you decided that you actually still want to be on my podcast a year later.
No, I have been waiting for the email saying you were back. And as soon as I got the email, I went in, I booked the first time slot I saw, and it's a Friday night where I am, and I'm like, this is the place to be.
Woohoo! I'm so excited. Okay, so Emily, I always love to ask my guests this question before we get started. So that question is, what does the term the awakened feminine mean to you?
I love that question. To me, it means, this is what's coming to mind, a woman that no longer tolerates bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
That has awakened herself. And to me, as a woman, there were many years of my life where I didn't realize I was tolerating bullshit. I thought I was, being a good girl and being nice and everyone was happy, keeping everyone happy. And to me, the awakened feminine, you've awakened to that fire within, right? Where you're still being a lady, but you're like, like, okay, we're not tolerating that anymore. This is what I'm a stand for. These are what my standards are. These are what my values are. And you're just a fierce advocate for your values, for your truth. And I think that can happen in a really beautiful way as a woman, and doesn't always need to be, the electric boundary or the like, that it can sometimes, come out as when we're really in it. But yeah, to me, the awakened feminine is a woman awakened to her badassness.
Yes, and you definitely are. I just love watching you on Instagram, and every Sunday, Monday for me, but it's Sunday for you. I'm just like, oh my gosh, Emily's gonna post her like spunky Sundays, I think you call them, and you've got like 10 posts, and
Yeah.
I just love those. They make me so happy every time. I'm like, oh, this is so funny, and it just makes my Monday.
Oh, thank you. I love doing them. And yeah, that's part of my awakening, right? I'd always been a little bit rule allergic, as I say, as an Aquarius. But I think the past 4 years since starting my own business, it was really, truly like, okay, well, where are we really caring about what others think? And where am I quieting myself? And where am I trying to be liked?
Mm-hmm.
And that in this journey of entrepreneurship the past 4 years, I realized there was a lot of ways I was trying to be liked by everyone and be digestible and not offend anyone and not be too much and not be too pushy, not be too loud, not take up too much space. So spooky Sundays are just the tip of the iceberg with that in my world.
Definitely. And I mean, I love reading your posts, and, you just say it as it is. That's what I love about you. That, like you say, there's no bullshit. There really is no bullshit. That's why I love, I watch a post, I'm like, oh, there's another one from Emily, and I'm like reading, going, yeah, yeah, and, and I totally love that.
Oh, thank you. And, I am in, as you know, the business coaching arena, and I feel like that is a space just rife with bullshit, with empty promises, with gurus promising $1 million results in 3 days, and just a lot of rules, a lot of shoulds. And I'm not a stand for that. And so I've been really enjoying this journey of uncovering what are these rules? What are the sacred cows? What's the process people are being sold on? And I just love to break it down. And, of course, there are certain frameworks and best practices, but I'm a big believer for every piece of truth, whether it's, truth, the capital T people act like it is, there's often evidence that it's categorically false. And so I just really enjoy that part of my job. Like, what are the rules you've learned about business? Let's tear them down and create your own rules.
Yes, and I love that because I'm sure you have too. I think I read in yours that you've paid business coaches lots and lots of money, and then they basically make you try and work their system, which obviously everyone's different and it doesn't quite work, or there's very little support for the amount of money you pay. So I just love that you're calling it out because it needs to be called out. There's a lot of people prey to that, that, oh, I can help you become a millionaire in 3 days. You're like,
Yeah.
no, that's not going to happen. Unless they've got some really witchy magic that can make you win the lotto overnight, or like, but that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah. And that's what really gets my goat, let's put it that way, about the business world, the business coaching world, is that there are so many new entrepreneurs with hearts of gold, coaches, therapists, healers of all sorts, a lot of my clientele that just really want to bring their gifts and their magic to the world. And they're really gifted at what they do, but then the marketing piece comes in and it's like, how the hell do I do that? And they have this big dream for their life to make an impact, big vision, and then they see some of this overnight success, 10K months, and you're just working an hour a week, and they hand over a lot of money to the trainer, the teacher, and are really often disappointed with the results, and then gaslit in some way that you didn't lean in hard enough, maybe you're not aligned enough, maybe your frequency's off. And I'm just like, look, the reality of starting a business is it is shadow work unlike anything I have ever experienced. It activates all of your greatest fears, wounds, doubts, insecurities. And the reality is it takes time and it takes consistency. And look, I come from the startup world. My background before I became a coach, I worked in startups, scaling businesses, right? And we weren't profitable in the first 2 years. We raised money to run the business on and pay people off of, because it takes a few years. And then I see in the coaching world, it's like, a millionaire overnight. I'm just like, what is this world? I don't get it. It's very unique to the coaching space. I think it's interesting, but at the same time, so many people in this space doing such beautiful work. And why I do what I do, and why I do the Spunky Sundays and all that I do, is to support those humans to get their magic out there, because the world needs it. Turn on the news for 10 seconds. It's a little scary out there.
It's a bit of a shit show. Let's just put it in those very blunt and yeah. I wanted to ask you, so you did you buy into the bullshit that is, that does happen? I mean, obviously there are lots of beautiful heart aligned entrepreneurs and coaches out there like yourself, but did you buy into that at the beginning when you first stepped into this world? Because obviously coming from like corporate and startups, and you did you did marketing as well, didn't you, as well, in that space? So coming into here, did you see the bullshit or did you buy into it?
I love that question. So I fell for the bullshit. really big time. And it's almost like my common sense went out the window a little bit at first because I was seeing all of this marketing and all of these big promises. And I was like, okay, like, game on. I can be a millionaire in a few months. And I just left for like cushy 6-figure salary in my 9 to 5. Like, that sounds great. And I have to pay you $6,000. That's okay, great, fine. And so I did a series of programs with different kinds of business coaches. My first was a little bit more, of the pro marketer, and the pain points and like, let's go. And that I received a grand total of 0 clients during that experience. Right. And then I was like, this is too much hustle. This is too much like hard work. And I was starting to see a lot of these feminine embodiment leadership business coaches that were like, hustle is bad and it's all about your energy and your alignment and manifestation. And then I started to get really interested in manifestation because they were saying like, you lie in bed all day and like align your frequency. And then all the clients come in. So then I ping ponged in the other direction. I was like, this guy's approach was too intense and it clearly didn't work for me. So let's do this. And so I signed up for, one of these feminine business coaches programs. And I've spoken about this on Instagram and it always gets laughs and like, are you for real? Did that really happen? But the only assignment she ever gave us, and as you know, coaching is a lot about accountability and action and implementation. The only tangible assignment she ever gave us was to give someone a blowjob to activate our throat chakra. So we could like unlock that, that abundance and that content would channel after the blowjob. And after that, I was like, I want my money back. This is bullshit. So I definitely have experienced both ends of the spectrum, like the hardcore pro marketers, you've seen the ads on Instagram where they're like hyped up on like, so who knows what they're hyped up on, right? It's just so intense. And $1 million funnel. It's the $1 million funnel thing, right? That they're always talking about. And then I was like, let's do the feminine approach. And then and then I got involved in some other things that I'm going to bore you with. But yes, I have fallen victim to it. Is not victim, but it was attractive and it played on my desire. And I tried it and I'm glad I did because I learned a lot and a lot of it has informed how I like to work with clients, which is definitely not that way. So yes.
Just not to tell your clients to give someone a blowjob so that they can activate their throat chakra. No, not one of the actions in your program.
No, I have never written that on a client integration plan. But can you believe that? That is a true story, girlfriend.
It's like, what the actual fuck?
And a good friend of mine, she was in the program with me and we both texted each other after that. And we're like, should we ask for our money back now? I think it's time to ask for our money back.
Yes, I think it is time to ask for your money back. That is absolutely crazy. I mean, listening to you, I also kind of very similar in that I initially like enrolled with a very like pro marketing, like, pick on their pain points, just like put salt in it and rub it so that they will buy off you kind of approach. And then we got the very feminine, yoni and stuff. I don't know, activate your yoni kind of approach. And I get it, but it's just, you kind of go, surely there's a in between, because that's what we need. We like in the world, we need that masculine and feminine. So how do we balance them so we actually are taking action, but also we also need to align our energies? So I just I just love that you shared that story, because the approach is so like, not, there's no in between. It's like, let's go this way or that way. But obviously you've learned from that. And I find that although you paid exorbitant amounts of money, you do learn from them in some way, shape or form, whether it's like, yeah, I'm not doing that, like what you did, or, you might have to have met someone in that program, or there is pieces of nuggets as always in that program. So yeah, it's just so interesting, this world of coaching and healing.
Yeah, it is. I always say, I'm like, when is someone going to come out with a TV show about the coaching world? Because if it's not already in development, maybe I should Maybe we should start doing the scripting for it because it's just it's just hilarious. I love it. It's endlessly entertaining. And I have no regret or anger towards either of those experiences. I think they taught me a lot. And I did take like a nugget from each one, but it really, yeah, everything that I think we navigate, right, as coaches, as healers, as humans, I believe informs our medicine and what we're here to give to our clients and the work we're here to do. And so for me, it exactly that. Like my approach and my day-to-day life is definitely, I like to blend both, like the real world, the tangible action with the energetics. I love the energetics. I love the law of attraction, but we forget law of action sometimes. At least I freaking did a few years ago. I was like, and then I went really into just doing manifestation programs, and I was doing like 3 hours of manifestation work a day. And then that, it's balance. It's balance with all of it. Right.
Yeah, for sure. So, Emily, I really want to talk to you about getting comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's, what you wanted to talk about during our time together. And I love this topic because, gosh, do we have to do that, especially when you step into entrepreneurship. But can you share a bit about, why it's so important to learn how to get comfortable being uncomfortable?
Yes, yes. And it's interesting because my first boss at my first job, it was a startup. I've been in startups for a long time. She told me, Emily, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Like that's how you're going to be successful in this space in startups. And I remember I didn't like her very much. So a lot of what she said, I threw out the window, but that stuck with me. Like to me, that was freaking brilliant advice. And I think about it often, the past 4 years in this journey. And this journey for me, the past 4 years, since again quitting a really cushy situation, I was at an incredible company making a great salary, managing a big team. I had all the boxes checked, right? But I'm not going to go into it, but I had that pull, right, of I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And very quickly like met my edges. I got really uncomfortable really fast, and have learned over this journey that your success as an entrepreneur is absolutely tangentially related to how uncomfortable you're willing to get, how messy you're willing to get your hands. How, like, instead of sitting back and trying to get it right and trying to get it perfect and trying not to look like an idiot and trying not to fail, it's just that will keep you going at a snail's pace as an entrepreneur. And this journey is really meeting your edges and really falling in love with discomfort. And for my entire life before this journey, I would run away from discomfort. Like, I'll give you an example. I used to be terrified of public speaking, quote unquote public speaking, right? Doing a podcast, me 4 years ago, I would have said no. Like, I would have had a panic attack at the idea of it. And you're nodding your head, you too, right? So in my 9 to 5 days, I had to present a lot, and I was so scared, and I would stay up so late with anxiety the night before I knew I had to present. And I would get on, in front of the office, and I would just black out and be like sweating, and I would come off and I'd be like asking my friends at the office, what did I say? I don't remember what I said, because my nervous system was completely strung out and dysregulated. And so for the first few years of my entrepreneurial journey, I would avoid public speaking. Like, I didn't do podcasts, I didn't do masterclasses, I didn't do Instagram lives. Even doing video was really hard for me at first, because that brought up a lot of my discomfort in being fully seen, in being viewed as imperfect, in being viewed as, oh my God, she's stupid. What is she saying? Or maybe, oh, I don't look perfect because it's not a photo I can like Facetune, or whatever the fuck I was doing a few years ago, right? And so it was just in meeting that edge of discomfort and breaking free from it that it just so much started to open up for me in my business. Like, my first podcast was about a year ago, which is incredible, right? Because my first podcast was with Beck.
Yeah.
and she is my coach and was my coach at the time as well. And it could have been a really comfortable experience. It should have been, right? She's my coach. But I got on, we were in Riverside as well. And I started having that same reaction in my body that I used to have in my 9 to 5 days when I was presenting, and ended up crying. And then we were like, let's do this at another time. And we ended up refilming it. It ended up being incredible. And then hearing it back, I was like, huh, I'm not as bad as I thought. And then long story shortish is I fell in love with it. And now I do podcasts all the time. Now I do master classes all the time. I love speaking now. So it was in meeting that discomfort and becoming comfortable with it that I experienced so much freedom, and of just feeling like, wow, that thing that my whole life, like, this goes back to being a kid in school, terrified, when I got called on by the teacher, stuttered and turned bright red, right? It was a lifelong thing. And as an entrepreneur, you're called forward. Wherever you're hiding, you are called forward.
Oh, I feel like what you said just was a message for me. A reminder. I just love that. And, that's how we met, through Beck, because I had just interviewed Beck and she's like, you need to, told you need to talk to 𝐄𝐦𝐢𝐥𝐲. And then that's how we met. And, here we are a year later after we met. But that is, yeah, like what you said just resonated so much. Public speaking was like enemy number one for me. It's like, no public speaking for 𝐄𝐦𝐢𝐥𝐲. Same kind of deal. I would just be so nervous because I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to speak up. And, here I am going, I'm going to start a podcast. How does that even make sense, right?
Oh, I'm celebrating you so how cool you went from having that fear as well, and now you have your own freaking podcast where you're doing these all the time.
All the time. Yeah, exactly.
Well, now I'm curious. I want to ask you, how did you overcome that? And what inspired you to launch your own podcast, knowing that was a fear?
It's actually really funny because I hated public speaking, and probably about 6 months before I started my podcast, I was doing my life coaching course. And during that time, we had to post like our reflections of the exercises, and when we do session swaps with our classmates, I had to do a reflection video. And at the beginning, I was just like, recording, when you like hit record of a video and you do it like 10 million times because you're just never happy with what it looked like. It got to the point where I'm like, I can't be fucking doing this all the time. I need to just go live. So I started going live and I started getting really comfortable doing that. But then, so that was how I got comfortable in front of video and just talking. But my podcast was middle of 2020 when I was working with two coaches, actually a very bro marketing coach and also a very feminine coach, although she's like very, she's got that balance. And I remember one morning I was meditating and I had this big loud voice just say, start a podcast. And I remember thinking, I don't have time to scratch my butt at the moment, but okay. So I said yes. And I just remember I got the name of the podcast, I got the questions, I got everything just like that. And I was like, okay, that's never happened before. That's really crazy. And so when I spoke to my, my coach, not the bro one, but the feminine, beautiful, gorgeous soul that she is, Emily as well, which I had on last week, she was like, yeah, you need to start your podcast. So I started my podcast within a month of getting that message. I didn't even think about not enjoying public speaking or, speaking and thinking, how am I even going to interview these people? Emily was like, you're a natural, you'll just do it. And I did. Like, I didn't even think about how scared I am of public speaking. I think also because it was pre-recorded back then as well. It was like, oh, well, I have a backup. If it goes wrong, I can edit things out and all those things. But yeah, that's how I started my podcast. Crazy.
I love that story. That's incredible. It just, and I love what you said there of it not thinking about it too much and just acting on that intuitive hit of like, this is where I get to go next. Like, it's a freaking podcast. Let's go. And, in my experience, that the more we sit in like, should I, shouldn't I, the pros and cons list, like in the analytical mind, the harder it gets to actually do the thing that you're thought looping and in analysis paralysis over. So like, I'm not an advocate at all for being like reckless and just like doing whatever, but I do like, I think the quicker we can do that thing that we know we're being called forward into, the faster we can break free from it. And if we sit in the getting ready to get ready, right?
Yeah.
Well, let me wait for the perfect time and let me think about the podcast and let me come up with the perfect name and logo and let me script out the guests for the next 2 years. And right, you just did it. And here you are.
Yeah. It was, yeah, it was really quite unbelievable because I just had guests like constant, and I still do. After you booked, and then I think I sent an email out, and then within 24 hours I was booked till September. I'm booked out until February 2025 at the moment. Like, what is happening? It is absolutely crazy.
Listen, why you have incredibly in demand podcast? Like everyone's fighting to get on your podcast, and it's just like, well, a few years ago I didn't even want to do this because it was scary. So like, look at that's beautiful. I love
Yeah.
this.
So let's switch this back around and talk about Emily.
Oh,
So how did you overcome, you talked about, we do why we need to get uncomfortable, but what was some of the processes that you had to go through? Because I mean, one of them we just talked about is just not overthinking it. But for me, there was also, as time comes, there's also things that sometimes I need to work on and dig into, or like I think you mentioned shadow work before as well. So can you talk a bit more about some, tools that you used, or, whether you didn't have to use any tools to overcome that discomfort?
yeah, I love that question. And yeah, to me, there's a few things I looking back that I did is, I mean, of course, right? As a coach, I was curious and looked at that with my coach at back of like, why is this happening? Right. And that's helpful, that awareness. And again, for me, it was like, okay, you bullied in school for when you did public speaking. Everyone laughed at you and was like, hey, you're red and you're stuttering. So that was helpful to understand, logically, okay, we can understand where this is coming from. And you can call it the inner child that feels really unsafe and feels really threatened. And so that awareness is really supportive. But to me, it was less like analyzing and trying to understand. It was more in the repetition of it and expanding my nervous system's capacity to do that thing that for my entire life it had been programmed to and read as very dangerous, very scary. I would get very activated, have the whole like heart racing, palm sweating, stomach dropping whenever public speaking occurred, or even when the thought of it, right? I would think about it and have that reaction. So it was a recalibration of doing that really scary thing over and over again. And I think there's always a lot of talk, especially as coaches, which I love, about different tools and processes. And of course, I did things like visualizing and hypnosis, but to me, there's no substitute for the action of it and actually putting your body, your nervous system in the situation, in the environment, and recalibrating and regulating. And so even like I'm thinking of my first master class, right? I opened Zoom. I saw there were all these people in the waiting room, started to notice my nervous system having a reaction. I was like, okay, let's do a little bit of a somatic shake. Let's let out the, let's do some deep belly breaths, and then let's do it. So I recalibrated in that moment. And then another thing that I'm a huge believer in, and I do this a lot with my clients, is so there's that narrative, right? We have that awareness. And in my case, it was what was the story? What was the belief? And the belief was, okay, you're terrible at doing this. You're terrible at public speaking. People laugh at you. And so the cool thing is, in the practice of repeatedly doing it, you start to collect evidence and data points that that narrative is bullshit. And so that to me is really supportive in getting the conscious mind on board. It's like, then I started to hear, I listened to my first podcast. I was like, oh, I objectively sound decent. Like, I know what I'm talking about. So there's that. And then I started to get feedback like, oh, you're a great speaker. I had my first masterclass. Oh, that was so helpful, Emily. Thank you. I got so much value out of that. And so I kept doing the thing and still feeling the activation and still feeling the fear, but collecting, again, regulating my nervous system and collecting more evidence for my conscious mind that that story wasn't true. So to me, that's what this like really boils down to. And that's why I love having accountability, right? Again, I'm working with Bex still, and just the accountability of we're not going to avoid it. We're going to do it. And I have learned from one of my nervous system mentors, and the more we avoid something, the more that teaches the subconscious mind and the body that that thing is dangerous. And it's like, okay, well, Emily's avoiding doing public speaking. She's avoiding doing podcasts. She's avoiding doing master classes. Oh, well, that must mean it's dangerous. So it's just that neural pathway of belief that that's okay. That is bad. That is dangerous. That is unsafe. That just gets stronger the more you avoid it. So it's just like, let's lean in.
Yeah, I love that. And I don't know about you, have you ever, when you avoid something, you can actually feel it like in your body? Like when you tighten up, you're like, oh, I don't want to do it
Mhm.
because I'm scared of doing it. And at the same time, you're feeling that, you can already feel it, that your body's already kind of shutting down, even though you're not actually going to do it because you're avoiding it, right? But you can feel it. So I think when you talk about it's teaching your body, oh, that's dangerous, you can already feel it like coming on, even though you're not actually doing the thing. It's really quite fascinating how the body works to already tell you like what it's doing, the processes it's doing already to you.
Yeah. I I work with a lot of women on their avoidant patterns, my female entrepreneur clients, because it comes up with, yeah, doing the scary thing in your business, and also things like money. It's like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. Like, let's just, or I don't have the money for that, or I owe someone this, or I don't want to invite the client to work with me and talk about how much it costs. Let me avoid it. And it's just, the thing about avoidance is exactly as you said. It doesn't actually solve much. It just lingers. It's just there. And it the longer we avoid it, I feel like the heavier that weight gets of like, oh, how much, it's almost like, when am I going to be found out? When is this when is this going to be over? Because you can't run from it forever. What you're running from can run faster than you. So it doesn't actually solve anything. And so a huge part of my work is with my clients, my women, is like, I ask that actually every week. I'm like, what are you avoiding? And usually they're like, damn it, Emily. Okay. I guess that means we get to do that. Lean into that this week. Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, the money conversation is such a big one in my world, avoiding talking about money, and talk about get comfortable being uncomfortable. Like, that's a big one. Right. And money is one of the most charged topics on the planet. And then especially as women, I think there's been a lot of programming around, oh, don't talk about it. Don't be pushy. Don't ask for too much. And that's an uncomfortable conversation.
Yes, I think not even just for like in the coaching world in general, you know, traditionally, and I put that in quotes, is that the men look after the household in terms of the money, right? So we've just had this program of, oh, we don't need to talk about money or worry about money, and we'll avoid money because that's not part of, what we look after. So I find it's very fascinating that, for a lot of women, that, money is such a hard topic. And for me, like at my house, I look after all the money. I've always have. My husband is just like, oh, paycheck, here you go. sort out everything, right? That's what I do. But when I talk to my friends, it's always the husband that pays all the bills and does all the things. My husband is like, okay, here's all my money. There you go. I'm like, thank you.
I love that you have this dynamic in your household. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, and I think, we need to get either, like, where you both can talk about money, and I mean, this is completely different but it is that where we need to both genders, sexes, bodies, whatever you want to call it nowadays, men and women need to both be comfortable talking about money in an equal way.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the world of entrepreneurship and just beginning your business and wanting to work with clients and fearing talking about money, or I remember this from when I first started, I would have a discovery call, and at the end, when the money came up, I would have again that nervous system reaction. I could feel like, oh, we're getting to that point in the conversation. My palms would get all sweaty. When I said how much it was, I think my voice was probably shaking. And it was again, like a very similar process of repeatedly doing it, of repetition, of regulating around it. And throughout my work, money comes up with clients on payment plans, or the payment's going to be it's overdue or it's late. And in the past, I would really fear bringing that conversation up because I didn't want to make them uncomfortable. I didn't want to push them. I didn't want to be too much. I didn't want to ask for what we had agreed to. And really understanding that in my own avoidance of the money conversation, I was just perpetrating that, perpetuating, that's the word, perpetuating that cycle with my clients. And so something I love to do now is just really create that space to really have that conversation and air it out and like just directly address it. And I've had clients say to me, like, thank you for making it normal to just talk about amounts and what we have or don't have and what we can pay off and when, and just instead of avoiding it and hiding and running from it. So I think it can be, I mean, for me, it was really healing having this kind of vortex within myself of talking about money. Because I remember too, in my 9 to 5 days, when it came to salary reviews, right? Performance reviews, just like going into that meeting with my boss and being like, oh my God, I don't want to ask for a raise. It's so embarrassing. I'm not good enough. Oh, what are they going to think? Oh, it's so selfish of me. And then this is the interesting thing I want to share with you is towards the end, right? I was managing a team, and so I was in charge of my team's salaries, and they would come into the office, whatever, for performance reviews, salary reviews, and the women would come in the room, and they were the top performers on my team, most of them, and they were like, "Well, I don't know if I deserve a raise because I made a mistake 8 months ago, and like maybe I should." And then they're not listening. They might know who they are. But so when the men would come in the room that really hadn't hit their goals and were kind of like lower performers on the team, but they were like, I deserve a $30,000 raise. I'm amazing. And it was just interesting to see the disparity of the woman who was the top performer, but was really feared asking for the raise. And the man who was not top performer had no problem.
Yeah.
I went off on a tangent.
Yeah. Oh, but I mean, that topic we can probably talk about for a whole nother episode. But it is so fascinating how, and, you know, as much as I said, I look after all the money and stuff at home, when I started in the coaching world, I also was like, oh, and because, when you work for someone, you just get paid. And I didn't even have to do salary negotiations back when I worked in the hospital because I worked for the government. So everyone's just, if you're in that role, then it will just kind of increase without you can't negotiate a salary because that's just the standard salary. So when I went into the coaching world, it was, like you, it was like, oh, I have to ask people to pay me. Like, oh, so it was quite interesting. But, once you, like you said, once you start doing it over and over again, and then you find your groove and how you want to ask for the sale, then, it's just easy. It's not, it's no longer even like a thought of, oh, there's not that shrinking and that constriction anymore. It's just like a part of the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And to me, that's what lights me up and turns me on so much about entrepreneurship is always finding those little areas where, oh, well, this feels edgy, this feels uncomfortable, and meeting yourself in that discomfort and in that edge just over and over again, and really falling in love with that process. And for me at this point, when I notice I'm uncomfortable about something, and I'm like, oh, that feels a little edgy, and instead of running in the other direction, I'm like, well, we know that's where we get to take the business next now, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
That's the next mountain we get to climb. And it's just, I love it. I love it. I love it. But I do believe it's, I always say this, but I think entrepreneurship is a special kind of crazy person because it's going against your human hardwiring, which really loves comfort. The reptilian brain loves comfort and routine and safety and security and the known. And entrepreneurship is, and just let's be honest, life in general is inherently unstable. And just you're really confronted with that with entrepreneurship, though, just how unknown things are and how little sometimes you can control life. And it is falling in love with that. And that's not for the faint of heart to by choice put yourself and choose daily, I'm going to be in the discomfort, I'm going to be in the unknown. And that becoming your new normal over a period of time, right? Of like the existential crises of the dark nights of the soul, which I have had many.
Yeah.
Of us like, I don't want to do this. I just want to have a 9 to 5 again and not have to be uncomfortable and just someone tell me what to do all day and I just take the paycheck every 2 weeks. But to me, that is a big reason why a lot of entrepreneurs don't keep going, because it's just like, fuck this shit. Like, this is uncomfortable.
Totally. And I've had the same, when you're in those, when you're in those dark nights, you kind of go, I just want it to be easy. Can I just go back? And then afterwards, once you get out of it, like, no, please just let me keep going with what I'm doing because I cannot, really can't go see myself going back to a 9 to 5. I can probably see myself going to do like work for someone, but it'll be very different to like, we'll have to really negotiate it so that we are both happy in terms of working for someone. Yeah, I think so. But, I'm not going there because I've got so much stuff coming up that, business wise, that I don't even have time to think about going to work for someone else at the moment. But it doesn't repel me. I think sometimes there's some entrepreneurs that might go, oh, I can never go back. But I think, yeah, I think I can, I can. But right now, it's definitely not for me right now. So, yeah.
I'm of the belief there is absolutely no shame in having a 9 to 5 or a side job. And I think sometimes that can be, I meet entrepreneurs that do feel shame about that, for not making either full living in their business. And it takes time, right? To get to that point of it being your full-time gig. And it just, that's not portrayed, again, going back to kind of the business gurus and what's portrayed in the online world, it's viewed as, again, very fast. It happens overnight. And so it's just unlimited abundance, 10K months, then a few months. And so I see a lot of entrepreneurs feeling shame for getting a side job. And I think it's the best decision you can make early on is to have side income. So you're not solely relying on your business and putting so much stress on your nervous system, because it's money. Like we do in this human experience, we do need it. And I've had some clients that are, more like they've been taught, well, that's scarcity mindset. You should just, be in abundance. But it's like, it's a real thing, right? And when you have $50 in your bank account, you're not in scarcity mindset for freaking out a little. And so I think just early stage entrepreneurship, I am such a stand for having that 9 to 5 income and like working the system and like knowing, hey, like this isn't my end game. And I think that changes your relationship with the 9 to 5 when you're not there forever. You're there to enjoy the nervous system safety and security of the income, of maybe the health insurance, right?
Yes, for sure. I think that, what you just said is so important for any new entrepreneur that hasn't made it to their, 10K months or, 100K months that's advertised. Because, like you said, it does put a lot of pressure on your nervous system. Like, why would you do that? And it's then flipping that perspective of, having this 9 to 5 or, part-time job, whatever it is that's keeping you going financially. So then you can also keep growing your business, because if you have $0 or $50 in your bank account, well, you can't really put anything in your business either. Obviously there's some of
Yeah.
us who have, the luxury of, previously having a good income, and maybe we had some savings so that we could start our business and scale a bit faster. But for people who really start off with very little, you do need that. You need that safety and security in your body to keep going.
Yeah.
Otherwise you're just not going to keep going, and you're just going to hate life either way.
Yeah. Yeah. On that, I think it is one of the greatest gifts that you can give your business in the early years to have, and your nervous system, to have some steady side income or savings or whatever it is, because putting all that pressure on yourself is, I think, also going to lead to burnout, like extreme anxiety, getting on a call with a client very much in the energy of, I need you to eat, please sign with me, which is, we go back to the energetics, not the vibe we're after, right?
No, because people can feel it when you're in that clingy, like, vibration. It's like, there's something like
Yeah.
wrong. It's like she wants to just, eat me up because she needs me to buy her
Basically
program.
wants to- Yeah. Yeah. A mentor of mine said this, but the most magnetic energy to be in is, I want you, but I don't need you energy. Like, I desire you. That would be beautiful. That would be really fun. But I don't need you. Like, kind of like with dating. Like, I desire you, but I'm not like all over you. Like, I need you, I need you, I need you to be happy, I need you to live. Like, no.
Yeah, exactly. That is the vibe we're going for. I desire you, but I don't need you. That is so perfectly put. I'm just looking at the time, Emily, and it doesn't look like we've got any questions. So I'm just going to keep going with our podcast. So we
All
talked, I want to
right.
flip the script quickly. We talked about being comfortable in, being comfortable, being uncomfortable. But what about when we are comfortable in the in the discomfort, when we're like actually uncomfortable, but we're comfortable sitting there and not doing anything to change our lives? It's a subtle shift, because we're talking about you need to get uncomfortable so that you can move to the next level. But there's people that are just in this discomfort and they're comfortable there.
Mm,
Just flipping it very subtly. how can we get, how do you help people get out of that? Because I'm sure a lot of your clients are sitting in the discomfort as well, and they're like quite comfortable sitting there. They know they probably need to get out of that discomfort, but they're just unwilling to. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you cut out a little, so I think I heard you fully. But so it's that person that is really gotten a little too comfortable being uncomfortable and miserable, it sounds like a little bit,
Yes.
right? Yeah, and I think that can, oh gosh, that actually what is coming up for me is remembering how I felt in the last few years of my 9 to 5, like very like very burnt out, very unhealthy, like objectively drinking too much, not eating well, partying, doing all the things. And I was really miserable, but in a lot of ways. But I was like, well, like, I guess this is, I mean, everyone else is really burnt out. Everyone else is drinking too much. Everyone else is, they wish they could do something differently with their lives, but they're not doing anything about it. So I guess this is all there is. And so to me, often when I see that, it is a belief that life just has to be this way, right? It's, well, suffering is part of life, or, well, other people have it worse, or I should be grateful, or, like learning it from your parents, right? It's just, so I think when we come across that, it's really questioning, like, okay, is this truly all there is? Is it true it has to be this hard? Is it true I have to feel this way? Um, and yeah, we see this a lot in the world, right? People in low level misery, like in life, in relationship, in whatever, in their career, whatever it is, and tolerating that energy of tolerating. And I think we're really programmed into that. Again, like especially as women, like other people have it worse. It's not that bad. You should be grateful. And I think it's starting to mm, start demanding a little more for yourself and starting to connect with, well, okay, that's actually what I desire in life. Like, what if it was different? What if it was better? What if it wasn't? What if it didn't have to be this way? Even though all my friends are telling me this is just, you should be grateful. This is how it is. Like, what if I really challenged that and started to explore how good could it get? And that was what led me to leave my career path. And I have a lot of clients that are in, and again, I often speak through the lens of career and business, but who are in 9 to 5s and things are fine, right? But they're not great. And it's so exciting to me to be walking alongside someone on that journey of awakening to what else could be possible in this one and precious life. And I think it also, as you start to get a little older, right? You start these things we start that we've been saying, oh, in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, it starts to be like, well, maybe I'm kind of running out of time to keep saying in 10 years. And it's like, what if I started making little movements, just little micro movements towards that impossible dream, that impossible vision that someone like me couldn't possibly experience. And that's what I love about this work of coaching is it truly is taking the impossible and making it possible through just micro movement, micro commitment, little steps, one step in front of the other, to see how that consistency towards a vision that maybe people tell you isn't possible, that people tell you is crazy, or you don't see the evidence that it's possible in your life because you're surrounded by people that are in low level misery. And starting to see how quickly your life can change when you start putting one foot in front of the other towards that crazy dream. But of course it starts with, could that could something more be possible for me beyond this experience, this reality? And I think that's a beautiful thing. Actually, we talk a lot of shit about social media, but I think people are starting to see different ways of living their lives that are off the beaten path, are off the societal timeline. And you're starting to see people living very different lives on different, like less money, maybe, right? And starting to prioritize things beyond the house and the cars and picket fence and the 2.5 kids. And I think social media can be a beautiful expander to show people, like, hey, if you're like not so happy, there's actually other paths that you can walk that maybe mommy and daddy won't like understand. Because that was my big hang up when I was leaving my 9 to 5. It's like, what are my parents gonna think? But it's just, it can be such an expander.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And yeah, I had the same thing when I didn't go back to work. My parents is like, oh, I spent so much time at university and, they just want me to be a professional. And now I'm like doing something completely different. It's funny what you also identify as being professional because, I would say I'm a professional podcaster now, but I'm not a professional in that the traditional sense of being a doctor or a pharmacist, which I was a pharmacist, and a lawyer. Those are the professional jobs. Whereas now I'm like, oh, it took me a while to wrap my head around that as well. So I totally understand when you're in a professional job. Your parents are usually the first people you think of. What will they think? Is not, yeah, they're the first ones. But I love what you share about, it's all about being curious to what else is there out there. Because I think as people get older, I think the curiosity, like there's less curiosity to explore. So it's kind of bringing that, ooh, what else can I be doing back into your life, I
Yeah.
think, right? Yeah, that's what I got from what you said, bringing that curiosity back. I love our conversation, Emily. I just love it. And I feel like, you just probably need to come back and we can talk about other things because we focused a
Oh,
lot. Oh, that would be so fun.
would love to. Well, when you have a schedule opening in like 2 years.
It's only a year at the moment, so we'll make it happen. I always believe that the universe will align if I'm meant to talk to someone sooner or whenever it's meant to be. So yeah. I wanted to ask you one last question before we wrap up. We've talked about being uncomfortable and how to actually make it comfortable. We've talked about, how to get out of an uncomfortable situation that you're comfortably sitting in. Is there anything that you really wanted for our audience to take home with them after listening to our conversation? Is there anything else, or is there anything you want to expand on from our conversation that you want them to take home with them?
I think I would love to leave the awakened feminine listeners with, wherever you feel the most a little twinge of discomfort or fear, or like that seems a little scary. In my experience, that is often where you get to go next and where your greatest liberation lies and some of your greatest just expansion and growth as a human. And it will be messy, but it will be worth it. And I mean, here I am. I faced my podcast fear and I had the best time with you. So that's what I would love to leave the beautiful humans of your podcast with.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so beautiful to wrap, tie a bow on. So, Emily, I want to ask you if people want to, find out more about you and, check out all your amazingness, where's the best place that they can find you?
Definitely Instagram. I do a lot of work on Instagram. I share a lot on there. I would love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this episode, DM me with your takeaways, what you learned, any questions. I would love to hear from you. I'm Emily Oriana Todd on Instagram.
Awesome. Of course, I'm going to have your details in the show notes so people can come and find you. I've had such a great time with you today, and thank you for putting up with the lag and the little tech issues we're having today. But such a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Such an honor, and we made the tech issues work.
Yes. Thank you for listening, and please join me next week for another episode of The Awakened Feminine.